Hello and welcome to Lessons on Advice, the podcast for young and aspiring financial planners. Look, first of all, I want to say thank you for all of you returning for the second episode. We're blown away by the fantastic response we've had from our first and really can't wait to continue the momentum. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a review on your stream platform of choice and leave any questions for us to tackle in the comments. I'm Ben Butler, and today I'm joined by Will Hartley, Adam Tweedie, Anna Robbins. Look, before we get started, there's always some slip-ups when there's no dress rehearsal, so I need to stop saying Adam and Anna in the first sentence. How have we all been doing this week?
Yeah, no, I've been good. When you're talking about dress rehearsals, I thought I'd need to wear a dress in case everyone thought I was Anna Tweedie this week. But no, my name is Adam.
Honestly, I didn't even realise I did it until I was listening back to it, and it was
Yeah.
completely subconscious. But it didn't help that when we were creating the descriptions for the episode, I did it again when I was writing what everyone's name was. So
Yeah,
it'll come with time, won't it? But
that's
yeah,
it.
fantastic.
When we're on episode 100, it'll be a distant memory.
I won't. I'll still be doing it. I'll still be doing episode 100. So
A friend of mine actually said, "Oh, I didn't realise there was two Annas on that podcast." Like, no.
Oh god, it's easily done. I'm going to do it so many times as well. But, yeah, look, here we are. Look, Will, what have you been up to this week?
Yeah, it's been a good week last week. A lot of a nice mix of meeting clients and meeting with sort of local businesses that I do work with. So I like it when you've got a good mix like that with a bit of networking thrown in, so it keeps it a bit fresh rather than same old sat in front of a computer screen all week. So yeah, good week for me, I think.
Any golf?
No golf this week. Saving myself up. I've got one in a couple of weeks' time, so just saving. I've only got a few good shots a year, so I'm saving up.
Don't use them all up. Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Anna?
Yeah, I've had a good week.
Good week.
Put a few applications through protection for some clients, which has been really great. I always feel quite passionate about protection because it's one of those things you feel very rewarded knowing that they're covered. So yeah, it's been a nice, interesting week getting those through. So yeah, feeling happy and ready to go.
I don't know about you lot, but it just seems crazy at the moment. I don't know what it is. I'm just having funny conversations with people. I nearly threw my phone out of the window with Scottish Widows rejecting like the third LOA in a week with it, and I don't know what it is. It's there's something in the air at the moment where it's all just going a bit crazy. I don't know if you find the same.
It's August, isn't it? You know, like everyone's on holidays. There's people missing. You know, I think they're all trying to scramble around and filling for that person that's out of, on annual leave or whatever. I find maybe that's it.
They are the worst though, especially from what I've had about 3 recently with those where it's just banging my head against a brick wall.
I had a similar situation recently where a client signed the paperwork, but he said to me as soon as he signed it, I set up this account when I was 16, and I think I just wrote my name out as if, I didn't have a signature when I was 16. So that was, of course, an issue.
Yeah.
Made it even worse as he works offshore. So we had a few days to kind of sort it. Now he went to Taiwan on Monday, so we managed to sort it, but the joys.
Great, fantastic. So today what we're looking to talk about is what the professional bodies don't tell you when you're training to become a financial planner. We've all done the exams in one way or another, and it's all very heavy on the technical stuff. And when you finish, you certainly feel ready to enter the big scary world of financial planning. But as we all know, it's simply not as simple as that, and there's loads of lessons that we learn along the way. So yeah, I guess what we're trying to tackle today is what are the hard lessons that we've learned, and what potentially people could make the most of when from learning through what we've been. So who wants to go first?
I knew they
Go on, Adam.
No, I don't mind starting. I think a key. I think ultimately we're advisors, but deep down there's sales in the background, and there's plenty of times where I've definitely not portrayed and maybe not been. It's the sales in the background that I've possibly lost out on quite a lot of business when I first started. So you understand how the pensions work, how the investments work, all the technical aspects of the product, but ultimately you do have to sell the product to the client. And I think there's absolutely no mention. I'm looking at the books just now of anything like that in those technical books. So I'm not sure how you guys feel, but there's definitely business that a experienced advisor would have converted over me.
I think it's that, like you said, the technical stuff's great, and you come out the exams. I think you've said this before, Ben. You come out dead giddy, and you're like, "Oh, I know all this stuff," and then you sit in front of a client, and the client does not care about the ins and outs of this taxation and these allowances, and they just want to know that they're looked after. And it's that sort of building the relationship and building the trust that is it's the hardest bit to sort of grasp at first, because you come out giddy that you just know all this stuff, and you want to show off a bit, don't you? But
Yeah. Ben, what was the first thing you said to me after one of my first calls with a client? And I said, "Oh, I don't know if it went very well." And you kind of were talking about how you'd had a client you didn't stop talking.
Yeah,
What did you
I
say
think
to me?
well, I think the first thing I said to you was to stop crying. Um, but the second thing was probably, yeah, it's exactly the case where you've spent all this time, years, and a lot of effort learning all of this stuff, and you want to be able to demonstrate it to the client that you're not just fresh, you know your stuff, and the client doesn't care because it's that old question of so what, isn't it? So you're saying all this stuff. How does it affect me? How can I benefit from this stuff? And I probably spoke for 80% of that meeting. I wasn't really listening to what they had to say, and it's something you learn the hard way. People can say it to you until you're in a live situation with clients. You don't really understand what it is that you're doing.
We've
Yeah. I remember you kind of like, I remember it was like, you'd kind of said to me, "Oh, one of my first situations where, I was talking a lot." And then you went to me, on your next one, just shut up. Just shut up. And I was like, that's a really good point. And I did. And I remember my second call with another client, and I just sat there and I just listened and listened and listened. And at one point I had to say to myself, "Annie, you need to answer. Like, they're probably going to think you're on mute or something." And
yeah,
and actually it went so much better. So yeah, it was a really good point. And obviously I was lucky that you'd had a couple of months in the industry before I joined, so you were like, learn from my mistakes and make sure you shut up. But you're right.
Yeah,
I think there is quite a lot of element of sales training that's needed, because none of us ever really, go into those jobs. I mean, unless you've been in an industry like that before, you don't know how to sell a product. But you're right. We know what we're talking about. We know that that's probably right for the client. But how do you portray that? How do you get that over to them? It's a hard thing to learn.
I
is
think
anyone? Sorry, carry on, Will.
no, I think it's a balance between you've got the sales bit and the technical bit, and then the emotional side. And you've got to mix them all together, because if you're too much salesy, the client's just going to sit there going, "Yeah, right, I'll buy from another bloke who's come on my doorstep, whatever." And if you're too much technical, as we've already said, they're sat there going, "What's this? What's this got to do with me?"
Yeah,
So it's finding that balance between the three.
yeah. When I first joined the industry, I spoke to quite a successful advisor, and he basically said, the technical aspect is so important, but don't be afraid of parking it and just make people like you. Don't get too caught up in, because I've done it before, sitting at my computer, pulling my hair out, trying to work out technical aspects of a pension, for example. But he said, just make sure people like you and you'll do well in this role. And I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. What's your
yeah,
thoughts on those people that come back and say, like, because obviously we've spoken about the whole sales aspect, but there's a lot of people that come to this industry with two different things. You're a relationship builder or you're a salesman.
Mhm.
But you know, I strongly believe you both. There is an element of selling. Maybe not to the car salesman sleazy type of thing that we all kind of think about when we think of salesmen, but there is that element, isn't there? But yeah,
I think the industry's gone full circle because back in the day it was just like that. You're trying to sell them single premium life insurance policy or something like that, and then the exams started becoming introduced, and you had to do your exams and become more technically minded. And I think it's got to the extent where there is such a heavy focus on exams, the sales element has sort of been left out of it. You can't kid yourself. At the end of the day, this is a sales role, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. In the UK, particularly, sales has got quite a dirty name on it. But essentially, you can be the best financial advisor in the world, but if you can't demonstrate the value of your advice, then you're not going to help anyone, are you? And that's essentially just what sales is. I spoke to an advisor who's got 40 years of experience today, and they used to just call people up on the yellow pages. That's how they did it, and it's just alien to us now that you wouldn't even think to. There's not even a yellow pages, but yeah, it's not it's not the right way now, and it wasn't the right way back then, but it's certainly improved. But if you're going to improve on the technical side and become more professional, you can't lose sight of the better points back in the day.
I think it's communication as well, because we do really, we explain everything, don't we? You've got to explain some of the most complicated things that are around. So if you can't communicate that in a clear way, then you've got no chance.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anne.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Ben, when you said about selling the value, because that's it, isn't it? You're not necessarily selling them this product because you think, oh, well, it's going to make me a buck or two. It's not about that. This whole industry now is about, this is what's right for the client. So how do I sell that value to them? How do I say to them, this is going to put you in a better position? And that's what it is, isn't it? It's about, you're right, that communication and that sales aspect of kind of, explaining that the value.
Even to professional connections, I find that quite difficult. If you're chatting to accountants, lawyers, you understand exactly how they can help clients, but trying to explain to them how you can help their clients is quite a difficult thing.
I think especially because some of those industries are so, they're very much, client comes in, they do what they need to do because the client's reached out to them, and then they pass it off and it's done. They're not relationship it, and then they're very much not salespeople either. So to try and introduce that to them, it's a bit alien for them to try sell someone else's service as well.
Yeah. And that's how we're different from solicitors, from accountants, and from mortgage providers. Look, if you need a mortgage, or you're buying a house, or you're self-employed and you need someone to do your books, you go out and find one of those professionals. Not many people realize. Nobody wakes up. It's that old saying. Nobody wakes up and realizes I need to go see a financial advisor today, unless something quite drastic has happened. A divorce, and inheritance, or something like that. The average person just doesn't think that. So the onus is on us to go out and find these people to demonstrate those values. And if you reword that, that's sales. That's exactly what it is. And so you've got to be comfortable with it, and all the things that come with it, whether that's relationship management is really important. One thing I struggle with is people sound completely different on email than they do when I call them up on the phone. I've had a chain of emails from someone. Christ, this person hates me. Oh God. And then I call up, it's like, hi Ben, how's everything going? It's just so different. It is so different, isn't it? And it's those skills that the CII, the CISI, the LIBF don't do an exam on. It's just simply not the case. I'm not saying that they do need to do something, but there needs to be some sort of education, and maybe that comes from us and other people in the industry. I don't know, of really just showing people what it is really like.
Yeah, I was sitting in a mortgage brokerage yesterday. It's a professional connection of mine. I was actually dropping in a bottle of wine because he passed me a client. So we had a good chat, but his phone was ringing. Maybe sat for an hour. It went about 4 times in an hour for people with inbound inquiries, and it's just totally different to us. If my phone was going, I would not be sitting on this podcast. I'd be sitting right next to the phone. So it's a challenge. You're chasing them, not the other way around.
Yeah, and if it was like that, you wouldn't be sitting in your office, but you'd be sitting in the beach somewhere, taking calls there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and it is again one of those things that you learn the hard way on how to deal with it. And I think that's certainly where being in the room with more experienced advisors does pay its dividends. They've been through the banks. I think a lot of the experienced advisors I speak to have normally done some sort of stint with a large bank or a life office or life assurance company, and they used to sit in a hotel for 2 weeks and have sales training to them.
Yeah.
It's just what it was like.
I think that's it, isn't it? Like the way that we've all come into this industry is so very different to how it used to be. You're right, they all came into banks or industries that they then moved into that. So, when you join these academies or when you go out and do these exams yourself, you're not coming from a background of knowing, are you? So there's an element of learning all the technical knowledge, but then learning how to speak to people. And hopefully you would come into this industry if you already had some of those skills. But essentially it does come down to you're learning a lot. Like I saw something once around behavioral science and how having saying one sentence over another can really impact the way that your client takes that. And I just think things like that are so interesting. But yeah, again, it's not something that's within our diploma qualification, and it's interesting.
I will die on this hill. So if you go to university, I believe that if you study psychology instead of economics or finance, and nothing wrong if you are studying one of those kind of degrees, that you will ultimately be more successful. Just understanding human behavior is much more an advantage than understanding why the S&P has tanked last week.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that moves on to I think this is slightly different, but the new business generation side of things I would say it's different from sales, although sales skills are massively involved with it. I think that's probably one of the biggest surprises for myself coming into the profession, on firstly how hard it is. It is a hard thing to do, but also how mentally draining it can be. That it takes at least a year to find out if these self-generation techniques worth, whether that's networking or your social media or working with professional introducers, and the time that it takes to build those sources of business. I think that surprised me the most.
Yeah. I think when you talk about the advice gap and how much opportunity there is, personally, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to open the doors and there'll be a queue waiting for me to give them all this advice, but obviously not the case. And it's, I think ultimately that will be the case, and financial planning will be a profession that's actively seeked out, in particular due to the wealth, big wealth transfer, whatever it's called. What's the correct term?
Great transfer of wealth.
That's it. Yeah, not the big.
All the right words in all the wrong places.
That's it. We should reword it.
Yeah, I don't know. I did think like that, but I don't know. I've been a little bit hesitant recently because so many people do find this what they perceive to be financial advice from Instagram and TikTok, and again friends that might have done that kind of thing, and even on I did have it bookmarked. It was the UK pensions chat Facebook group. I had it on my browser. I just bookmarked it. I'd have a look through it every now and again. And there's so much rubbish on there. Honestly, it's unbelievable what people say, and you can't argue against them. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just wasted energy you put out into the ether on it. But yeah, it goes back to that demonstrating the value that we all know that we can bring, and how to show the light to some people.
Yeah,
I think sometimes it's breaking down that barrier between when people think of financial advice, they think they've got to be millionaires.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I can't need a financial advisor. I've just got a pension that I've had for 30 years, but I can't need a financial advisor, and I've just got this and that. And when you actually go in and go, this, the amount of people that are shocked that actually this is a service not only that's open to them, but that they need and that they couldn't benefit from. When I first started, that was probably the thing I found most bizarre, because I think for me, especially growing up in the industry, working my way up from apprentice all the way through, in my head, it's dead straightforward. Of course, everyone needs a financial advisor. Why wouldn't you? Because we know it. But when you look from the outside, you're going, how isn't this bigger?
Where is everyone?
Where is everyone? Yeah.
There was a referral that I got passed over from a family friend, and it was an inheritance case. Someone inherited over 200K, and he still didn't think he needed he didn't know what to do with the money. And my family friend said, I consider speaking to a financial planner then. And he was like, oh, I never considered that. And so if you're, that's what we're up against.
Yeah.
So what's worked well for everyone when it has come to new business generation is I think we've all tried a little bit of everything. Some with more success than others, and even if the success hasn't come just yet, what gives you the feeling that you're on the right track for something?
So for me, I always ask referrals. Like, I've finished with a client. I always say to them, please, 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 if you think that I've done a great job for you, like, speak to your family and friends. And I think that I'm starting to see some of that. It's been a good few months of doing work for people. I haven't spoken to for a few months, but suddenly I've had, one or two come in that have said, oh, you helped, my friend or my family member. And I'm like, yeah, oh, yeah, And I think it sometimes you forget about that. You forget you even ask for them. But then when they come in, you're suddenly like, oh, that did work. Or, a referral that you've made from a colleague, a will writer, or a solicitor, or whatever. Eventually, when you start seeing that happen, you're kind of going, okay, it makes a difference. But they're few and far between. I mean, how long do these things take to kind of come about, right? I know I've spoken to a few experienced advisors previously that said, oh, it can take 2 to 5 years to start seeing some of that actually happen. And I don't know about you, I'm so impatient. So I sit here and going, 5 years? Can I really sit here and wait for 5 years? But it's a long game, isn't it? For your own generation of leads.
Definitely.
I think
I was exactly the same with professional introducers. I try and do a coffee at least once a week with someone new, and I think, when did I have this first? Maybe beginning of the year, and nothing had happened. I thought the guy forgotten about me, and got two referrals from the same day, from the same guy, and that was where are we? August, 8 months later. Again, it's something that you don't expect, but these things do take a long amount of time to do it. And you think you're doing all of this great work at the beginning, and you're getting nothing from it. But as you say, and it's all just ticking along in the background, just sort of brewing away, and then just when you've had a rubbish week, you just I don't want to do this anymore, and then just something lovely
Pops
typically
up.
comes out. Yeah, absolutely.
Think about it from the other way round as well. So I've had, multiple clients that I've spoken to before and said, do you need to speak to somebody on wills? Do you need to speak to somebody on an accountant? Blah, blah, blah. And quite often it's kind of like, yeah, maybe later, or not right now, or whatever. And you kind of then get to that place. Now I've started once or twice. I've recently had a referral that I've sent to somebody. And you kind of then start sitting there going, well, it's been months before I've sent anything over, so maybe that's the same. But they still popped into my head to go, okay, yeah, I can sort someone for you. I can, I've got something for that. So maybe it's the same thing. We're just there, and they haven't realised they've needed us, and suddenly a client has gone, actually, you're right. I could do with that now.
I think
So maybe it's
touch points are good as well. If you've not heard from them, just any excuse to sit down with them, even if it's just a coffee. Don't speak about business, just so you're always in their mind.
who doesn't love getting out of the house and just going for a coffee?
Oh, I know. Do it all day.
I think
I do. Sorry, go on.
I think it's just speaking to people as well, isn't it? And getting used to speaking to people is one of the bits that just shocks you how nervous you when you go to a networking thing for the first time, or even for one of those one-to-ones, and you just sit there going, "Oh, I don't quite know what to say," and then all of a sudden you get in your rhythm with talking about dentists or whatever it is you use, Ben, and you get your metaphors and you get everything else, and you get used to how to do that side of things and build up those. It's same with the client side. It's building up the relationship and the trust, but with them it's even more so because it's not only their investments; it's their business. And the way that I tend to talk about these things, it's trying to communicate to them this is actually protecting your business and growing your business. Because if someone's coming to us and we're working together, if it's a will writer, if they need a will, I'm going to pass it back to you. Whereas if they get some other financial advisor from down the street that you don't have anything to do with, you've sort of caused a disconnect in your web of referrals.
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, I've got my favourite coffee spot in Milton Keynes. If you're local, it's Brown's by the Hub, and there are a couple of booths in there that are just the perfect place to take just a fellow professional, whether HR consultant or accountant or solicitor or estate planner. Pick your profession of choice, and just sitting down and having a coffee with someone is such a big thing, and it just doesn't seem like it. I can remember all the conversations that I've had in that booth. The first one I had was with my partner when I told her that I was finally regulated by the FCA, and had plenty of other great conversations in there since. But I remember those because it was a face to face, and there's sort of that like professional connection, obviously, and I don't know, it just makes that kind of difference, and people remember you a bit more because of it. And when you're looking to start having those conversations with people and inviting people out for coffee, you've got to do your prep on what they do, what their business is. So you can demonstrate that value. It goes back to the sales techniques of what we do, and how bringing you into their business and how they work and their clients, which people are very protected of. Any referral over to you reflects on them as an individual, so they've got to be 100% sure that you're going to be able to add value to them and to their clients.
It's trust building, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. You're not only do you need to build trust with your own clients, but you need to be building trust with these connections as well, who are going to, they've already got that trust with their client. They don't want to pass over some random person's details. They want to know that, yeah, exactly that, they're giving over someone that they trust as well.
You can also, I've done this previously with a professional connection, and I'll show you exactly how we work. We can run through the full process, and then ultimately ended up getting business from them as well. But it's actually quite a good exercise because it shows them what the client experience is like. So going into the office, teas, coffees, it's all, it's professional. It's not me sitting in my spare room like I am just now. So that was quite good as well.
Did you go whiskey tasting the other day?
Yes. So that's another one. That was with a chap that I met at a networking event, but I've ended up joining the society. Here's my membership.
They saw you coming, didn't they?
Oh, I know, that's it. Yeah, he got a free bottle of whiskey, so I think that was his plan all along. But no, it's quite good. So there's one in London, 2 in Edinburgh, and 1 in Glasgow. You can take up to 4 people, totally members only kind of thing. So it looks quite good. And we actually get chatting to a couple of neighbouring tables as well. So that could also be a good route just to chat to other people and see what they're up to. And it's like a membership based thing. So it's cheap and it's worth it. So we'll see how that goes.
Sold. So if I join, do you get a bottle of whiskey?
Yes, that's right.
Brilliant. Deal, we'll split it.
That's it. So that'll be my next coupon code.
We can share it on our 100th episode.
Yeah. I was having a look. You can do a tasting, and it's like a private room, 10 people. And I was thinking about inviting 5 professional connections, and then telling them to invite another 5 people that they know or that could be of use. So it's like £30-40 per head, I think. That includes, the whiskies, small bit of food. But I was hoping to run other events like that, so keep you in the loop, see how they go.
And I think this is exactly what we're talking about. It's these kind of everyone's doing the same thing. I meet you at a networking event, we have a little chat, who knows if it goes mirror. Sometimes we speak on LinkedIn afterwards, etc. But these but these different things where people go, oh, Yeah, I remember Adam because he's the guy that did that whiskey tasting.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
it's differentiating yourself from everyone else, isn't it? And trying to do things that show your character and your type of personality and who you are. Is a really great way of building that business.
Yeah. I think if you give a little as well, even if it's just 30, £40 or a bottle of wine, or, people in their mind are thinking, okay, I need to think about who I can introduce Adam to, or any friends or family that might need financial advice. So it's a small investment, I think.
Yeah. And an experienced advisor I spoke to once told me that when it was his clients' birthdays, like big birthdays, 50th, 60th, whatever, he'd always make sure that he sent them a birthday card. You know, if he hadn't spoken to them, you know, hadn't done business for ages, sent them a business card. And that always stuck with me. Birthday cards, not business card. And that always stuck with me because I was like, okay, I don't know about you. You know, when you receive a birthday card from somebody you haven't, you know, seen for ages, and you always think, oh, that's nice, isn't it? And I always think, you know, if you're sending that card, they're going to open that and they're going to go, Anna, forgot about Anna.
Yeah.
Or
I think
just.
I think there's two sides to that as well, because the other side is every time you go into someone's house and you see all the birthday cards, if you stood waiting, you'll have a read of them. So it's like free advertising. I know going back quite a few years, there was a firm that used to do it with advent calendars. So if the client had kids, they'd send them an advent calendar and it was branded, because you knew then it was going to be up in the kitchen or wherever they keep it for 25 days of December.
Yeah.
And I thought that's really clever. It's just different ways of getting yourself out there, isn't it?
Definitely.
So what does this come down to, right? This comes down to another thing that these professional bodies haven't taught us: marketing.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
You know, none of us really know how to market not only ourselves but our businesses. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm stumped on a weekly basis. I'm sat here kind of thinking, oh, what LinkedIn post or what Instagram post do I need to do now to market myself and market my business? It's so difficult.
Yeah. I
nearly went out.
Oh,
Sorry, go
on.
on, Alan. I nearly went out leafleting the other day. Honestly, I had a quiet week. I was like, buy 1,000 leaflets or something for £100 or something, and then do that. And no, I fought against it in the end. So it's like there's got to be something a bit more creative or a bit more eye catching, and I didn't want to spend £100 either.
This was quite a good £50 spend, or £45 for marketing. It was a dentist client of mine. I'm not sure if I told you this before, but he was signing all the paperwork with this pen that I'm holding, and it was a gifted pen from becoming my cousin's son's godfather. So it was a nice pen. So he signed all the paperwork and he commented on it and said, "Oh, your pen's fantastic." So of course, bought him the pen, dropped it into the clinic, said something nice for your desk from Adam. He then posted a picture of it on his Instagram to like 22,000 followers or something, because he's quite well known. And then I had about 5 or 6 dentists follow my page with similar followings, all blue tick on Instagram. So I was thinking that was well worth £45.
There you go.
Yeah, it's just thinking out the box and remembering things that the clients say. It can go a long way.
Adam, really, I should be sitting here taking so many notes. You clearly are the man of marketing.
I'll send you a pen then.
The Scottish Don Draper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Any other lessons learnt the hard way of what we didn't cover in our exams? I want to talk about providers. Okay. And this isn't a shock for me, because I went through the route of administrator, power planner, advisor. So I've got loads of experience with them. But I still hate them, if that makes sense. LOAs and dealing with providers, particularly on pension transfers, is just, it boils my blood. I don't know. I'm quite a patient person. For things like this, it really, really does test my patience.
What's the things you don't like?
Well, I've got a pension transfer going through at the moment that was agreed in April, and it's £1,500. It was just a small part of a wider consolidation, and Mrs. had one, Mr. had one, and they transferred his absolutely no problem. But for some reason, they won't do hers, and it's £1,500. I don't know why.
Mm.
You know, I've spoken to the receiving provider, the seeding provider, and nobody can tell me why they're not doing it. But and it's just one example
Yeah.
of having to go through the pain that is,
Yeah.
you know, financial providers. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, or maybe I'm just incredibly irate.
I'd
I had
probably
a bad
flip it. I quite like it. I like how hard it can be because I think it gives us a really good opportunity. And you know, sometimes I had a great example where the provider of question was being an absolute nightmare. They made it almost impossible to get policy information, either us trying to get it or the client. We ended up raising 2 complaints with them, got them paid out. So before I've got paid, the client's already had payouts. So he's already in a good mood. But I'm sitting down doing, you know, going through the pension transfer case and everything else. It doesn't matter where that was. The client just said to me, he went, well, if this is how they are when I'm just trying to get a bit of information, what's it going to be like when I try and take my income out? And I'm going, exactly. You
Yeah.
know, so I think it is the most painstaking bit of our job, but it also is the bit that can make us, if we get it right, can make us look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a similar situation to you, Will, and it was a provider that they were saying they can provide all of the information over the telephone, but we need it in writing, of course. So then I had to go back to the client. You know, can you contact them? Can you try and get access? So you feel like the client's doing your job. He ultimately sent me 52 documents. Genuinely through he actually WhatsApped me them, so I was like get these sent securely. So then we went through it all, and same thing, he was saying, if this is how the provider's acting towards me as a client, you know, and it's just it's so bad. But yeah, 52 documents we had to go through one at a time. Yeah.
I've had clients before that, you know, when you talk about the process of like switching pensions and then you start talking about fees, etc., and they kind of go, why is it so much, or why, you know, why are you charging for this? Couldn't I just do this myself? And I laugh because I do think, yeah, essentially you probably could.
Mhm.
But but once you've had this conversation and you hear about how difficult it is sometimes to just get that information from clients and or from the providers, and you know, do all the things you need to do in order to move things, you kind of go, people don't have time for that. You know, they're working all day every day and they're doing this, but this is our job. You know, it's our job to get this information and to do it. And so I don't know about you. It's sometimes, you know, when you think, why would I spend a couple of hours of my day trying to paint my living room? I can pay someone to do it. You
Yeah.
know, it's whether your money comes down to time or money.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the situation, isn't it?
It's also sitting, you know, if people could have 6 pensions dotted all over the place, how do they know which one to put them all into? So if you do it
Yeah.
yourself, great. Which one are you putting it into then? Which one's best one? How do you know? You're going to have to ring them all up. You're going to have to do all this. And by the time you finish, you might as well have just got us to do it for you.
Yeah.
I have,
And at least you know it's been done by a professional who can give you all the information.
And you're in the right place.
yeah.
And they can see you if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
I had
Maybe
a
not.
pension transfer case that I spent so much. I was actually thinking about it this morning randomly, and it's months past now. Spent so long on it, 8 different pension pots transferred across. Presentation went well. Client just completely went quiet after paying the paraplanners, getting the documentation together, and I have no idea what he or she will be doing with those pension pots, and no, you know, I'd rather she texted me and said, Adam, I didn't like you as a person instead of just nothing. So now I'm sitting wondering why this didn't go ahead. And the presentation went totally fine. So who knows? But yeah,
I think that there's also part of it that the providers do where they've taken regulation and spun it in their own way. So I don't know if any of you have had a real problem with sort of ones where it's a workplace, there's trustees involved, and because of that, they make it an absolute nightmare, from pension scams to pension questionnaires and doing pension wise calls. And I've had clients say they feel bullied by them not to leave.
yeah,
And that's the exact opposite of what the situation should be. You know, make sure they're informed, make sure they're doing the right thing and they understand what they're doing, but don't bully them into staying because you're making it too hard.
yeah.
And
Totally.
it should come down to like what is better for them. Like that's our job, isn't it? It is better to say, look, we need to put you in a better position. And if that provider isn't doing that, then how do we make sure that you are achieving your goals in a better position for you? And I feel like these providers need to have that level of like it's consumer duty, isn't it? Like, they need to have that as well. They need to kind of, rather than be withholding information or stopping people from moving, if we're suggesting and the client wants to move because they think they're going to be in a better position elsewhere, then surely these providers should be going, we're doing something wrong, not, how do we fix that process, rather than going, no, you can't go.
It's that old adage that the amount of people in the transfers out team is probably a fifth of the people in the transfers in team.
Yeah.
But when I'm dealing with a provider and they're being really rubbish on the transfer coming out, I'm not going to think, oh, well, I'm going to go give them more business. If it's the flip side,
Yeah.
I'm going to see someone from that provider, and before I've even read the statement, think, I don't know if this is going to stay here or not.
Yeah.
And they just don't help themselves. They really don't. But as I said right at the beginning, I've known about this problem for years, and I think new people come into the industry will be surprised with how hard it actually is to get this information out of them or get a transfer out of them. And I don't think there's any golden bullets to solving this problem, is it? Unless you hire an administrator whose full-time job it is to do it.
Yeah.
But I certainly lose patience with it.
Do any of you do your own paraplanning at all, or is it mostly outsourced?
Depends on what it is. Obviously, with these quite complex cases, I mean, if you're moving 8 pensions, that's definitely not something I don't have time. I mean, I'd be sat there for a whole week writing up the report alone, I think.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, so it really just does come down to the work. I set up a new ISA for a client this week, and I did write the reports myself and did do the work. I think it's important that we learn it. Because I think, there are a lot of advisors that they're lucky enough to have power planning teams within their companies, and obviously they never have to do that. But, you then focus on that, on the client communication side of things and having those relationships, which I think is wonderful, don't get me wrong. And sometimes it would be nice not have to do it. But also I do think as a new advisor, it's important you learn,
Yeah,
because I I think you're a better overall advisor if you know all of the processes.
yeah,
And I kind of, that's one thing that I've really focused on whilst in these early months, is trying to learn every step of the things that I need that happens within those processes, because I think it's important in order to communicate that back to your clients.
it avoids you getting stung like I did as well. If I sat myself, even if it took me a week to write up that case, I wouldn't be £600-700 down, which I am now. So it's a bit of a hard one when you're first starting out.
Is I think when I first started using power planning, I had two cases at the same time. So I thought I'll write one myself and I'll give the other one to power planning to compare it. I spent an entire week writing that letter, and I used to be a power planner, but you move to a different company and you need to know how they do it and what they're looking for and what compliance is looking for. I spent a week writing this. I hadn't even finished it by the end of the first week. And then that other case came back from power planning. I took one look at it and I immediately sent my other case to power planning for them to do, even though I'd done 80% of the work, because I just couldn't do a good as job as them. But it's really good what you say, Anna, that you need to be able to do it, or think you can do it, and understand the advice fully, because it's one thing saying, oh, we'll do 20 grand into ISA, 50 grand into GIA or bonds or whatever it is, but the advice is obviously a bit more complicated than that. It's a 25-page report normally, and so you've got to be able to understand everything that goes into it and why it's there, and everything behind it. So
It's also
And I
our main
think quite
point.
often, like, it's about bringing back those justifications of why that was the recommendation for the client, and why you're advising what you are advising, because it does make you think back and go, I'm putting this report together, I'm talking about why I'm recommending this for my client and why I think this is the best solution. And it did, there were times it made me think, oh, actually, could I have done better if I'd suggested this instead or that instead? And I think, it makes you replay those conversations, doesn't it? And go back and kind of have a think about what they'd said and using their own words in some of the sentencing. And which I think is so important because, you're capturing exactly what that client needed. And it has helped me learn the process so much, I think.
When you're speaking about client-owned words, I wrote a report recently, and they're saving towards their dream home. So they've already got a flat, want to purchase their dream home by the age of 40, and they're investing due to the time scale that 7-8 years. And in the report, I wrote something along the lines of, you're saving towards your dream home, or as you put it, in inverted commas, a really, in capital letters, nice house. So on the report, that's what it states, and that's what they said. So
And also, haven't you got to make these a bit more fun? Because these reports can be so dry sometimes.
It's it looks out of place though, because the rest of the report's like very compliancy and quite dry, and then it's this one sentence that's quite personable. And but yeah, it's interesting.
I once had to do it in an annual review right at the beginning of my career. I don't know if I should have done it, but this guy was a serious guy in the investment consultant world, to the point that he would advise sovereign nations on how to invest their wealth fund. Like, really knew his stuff. Why I was his financial advisor, I don't know. And I put in the review, we've reviewed the investment strategy and have elected to omit any Chinese holdings, as you don't, in quotes, trust those pesky communists.
Goodness.
Oh, God.
Surprised they didn't tell you how to do your own job.
Well, compliance say use the client's own words where possible.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How did that go? Did that go through? Did that actually?
I don't think people read them, do they?
Yeah.
No,
We've got
probably
a new
compliance team did. Well, they didn't mention it, so
we have access to a new
It's
AI
fine.
system with Zoom calls. So if I was speaking to Ben as a client, it basically analyzes everything we were discussing. I don't know if you've seen that before.
I've had a client.
Even mentions you spoke 80% of the time. The client barely got a word in edgeways, so shut up.
Yeah, I think this is another conversation for another podcast. I think we could talk about this for an entire hour if we.
I've never used it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So I've got a family member that works for Zoom, and the only downfall with it is, say you've got two people on the same camera and the same thing, it treats them as the same person.
Okay.
That's the only bad thing about it, but I've been told that I think that's being addressed.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should say that. That might get cut.
Cut.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great place to end.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time. So yeah, we'll definitely do an episode on AI and the technology that's coming, because this has been a role that's been very starved of new ingenuity and any new tech coming in, and AI has certainly changed that. We'll do a deep dive on that in the future. But look, I hope you've all enjoyed today's conversation. Look, one last favour from me. Please do leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you've got any questions about getting into the profession or how to make the most of it whilst you're here, then please leave a comment again on Spotify or YouTube. We'll do our very best to scramble for an answer. So thank you all very, very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.